Yes, I know. I told you way back in August that that was the final episode, and it still is. There's just this 7 months ago. I can't believe it was. I thought maybe I did that halfway through the school year, but it was at the beginning of the school year 7 months ago. So now I thought it would be good just to have a refresher and a kind of a heartfelt episode for me because today I'm going to talk to you about some things I've changed, things I've done wrong and wish I could do over. So, a little, on the heartstrings a little bit. So, I will tell you this. I have decided now not to sub high school anymore. And it's really to kind of keep my sanity. Now, when I say that, there is immediately a thought that pops into your head as to why I would say that. And that's not the reason. So I'm going to save that till the end. But let me tell you some things I've done wrong since August that I wish I had back. And it has to do with me not recognizing my audience properly, I guess might be the way to say it. Let's go to first grade. Okay. I made a first grader cry. And then, of course, you probably know my personality enough to realize it almost made me cry. It was innocent enough. It's over. That student will still come up in the hallway and give me a hearty greeting, sometimes a hug in the morning. So it didn't have any long lasting consequences. Here's what I did. You know, I went and saw a Seinfeld show a few weeks ago, and he made fun of water bottles and staying hydrated. I feel the same way. His standard joke was when he was in school, he took one drink out of the fountain at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he was good until 8 o'clock the next morning. But yet we've got all these water bottles. Everybody's got to stay hydrated. So, first grade, cute little girl, did all her work. She accidentally knocked over her water bottle. On her own, she went over, got the paper towels, and cleaned it up. I didn't say a thing. Well, 30 minutes later, it happened again. She cleaned it up. So I thought it was my place to then say, you need to put your water bottle back in your backpack. She didn't say a word. She just got over and carried her water bottle back to her backpack. And from behind, I could kind of see her, show, how somebody's crying and you can kind of tell from the back, she's kind of, her shoulders are kind of, and then she turned around and the tears were just flowing. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is not going to be good. So, softy that I am, I said, all right. I'm going to give you another chance to show me you won't spill your water bottle. And she did. She did real well. If I had to do that over, maybe I need to realize that first graders are just a different breed. You can't just go in there and insist that they do things. You got to kind of play to their personalities. There is a large gap I have learned in every first grade class that I've taught. That is really the heart of learning to read. And there is some students in there that I could just about give them any page in a book and they would read the whole thing. There are some that I would just put maybe 5 or 6 sentences up on the board and tell them to pick the easiest one and read it to me. And they would struggle. Maybe they knew it, but maybe because I was putting them on the spot, they struggled with it a little bit. So that's how I dealt with, one of the things that if I had to change, I would try to be more selective about maybe I would hand out sheets of sentences or put them up on the board. And when they are ready, think about it as first graders, they will, as soon as you say, okay, I'm going to ask a question, there's four hands that go up. They don't even know what the question is. It could be a question that when they miss it, they get embarrassed. Well, I hate that. I don't want them to be embarrassed. So I think in the future, I'll put sentences up on the board. not say a word to anybody and tell them, all right, when you see a sentence up there that you would like to read to the group, come up here and tell me, and maybe do it that way. So that's one thing about first graders. Another thing is they like that is the tattle age, even more so than kindergarten. They like to tell each other. Now I just tell them that I'm not crazy about tattletales. I don't want anybody to get hurt, don't want anybody to get picked on. I'll deal with it and then go from there. So I've kind of changed along those lines a little bit. I have absolutely fallen in love with subbing elementary school to the point that I don't think I can go back to high school. In fact, I know I won't. And here's what happened to me in high school. I had already cut it down to about two teachers. There's only two teachers that I would sub for. And I subbed for one of them a couple of times, and their planning period is the last class of the day. Now, I'm not one of those that boat out of the school an hour early because I have nothing to do. Well, they're paying me for that hour. Maybe something's going to come up. Well, I've gotten to the point now that I don't want to be moved anymore. If I've had an enjoyable 6 periods, maybe 5 periods in a day, and then you move me and ruin the rest of my day, well, I've got to face a reality here. That's what happened to me. I did not like the class that I got moved to. Their personalities were a little bit too strong to me. And I've become accustomed to elementary school. So that's part of the reason. It's my tolerance level for high school students has gone down. That's my fault. Well, here's what happened. We were within probably 3 minutes of when the bell was going to ring, and they knew I wanted to get out of there as quick as possible. And so they talked me into saying, Mr. Collins, we'll be real quiet if we all leave 3 minutes early. We'll walk down the hallway. So I let them talk me into it. We got out there, and sure enough, one of them yelled out something. I think it was something to the effect of, it's an ice walkout. Now, that's a controversial topic that I will not state an opinion on, but either way, it didn't need to be yelled out in the hallway after you promised me that you would not. So I kind of went off on that kid. I don't use bad language, so it wasn't anything like that. But I know I said something to the effect of that was an idiotic thing to do. Now, did I just call him an idiot by doing that? Well, that's one of the reasons I'm not going to go back to high school. It wasn't just that kid, but I now don't trust myself to control myself in those situations because I have become accustomed to not having to deal with those kind of things in elementary school. I can get a job in elementary school almost every sub day. So if I go back to high school, my wife has told me there are 2 or 3 schools that will move you to other classes. They're desperate, they have to. But she thinks I should let them know that it's discouraging to the subs when they've done a good job, they love a class, and then you move them to a class that really makes them struggle for that 1 hour. And for that reason, I won't go back to various different schools. So that's part of that. Now, I will tell you about some. I always, I come from a generation, and our generation was radical for the time, I guess. I mean, I grew my hair down to my shoulders because I wanted to look like the Beatles. I was more of a 70s guy. In the 60s, as you know, was the hippie generation, and we still had the Vietnam War going on, and there was a lot of protests, and you have the right to protest, all that stuff. But I knew that it might be, I grew up let me just say it like this. I grew up in a generation where we respected old people just because they were old. No other reason. Didn't have to be smarter than us. We respected them just because they were old. That's gone. I'm not here to say any generation is better than another one. I'm sure Somebody when I was in the 60s and the 70s thought we were doing things that were radical that we shouldn't be doing. But at the same time, I knew that when we got to a situation where Generation Z teachers were teaching Generation Z students, it was going to be interesting because none of them could care less. I'm stereotyping, that was wrong. I'm going to say it again, though. None of them could care less whether they respect older people or not. They're going to say and do what they want to say and do. I call it the Mark Zuckerberg generation, although I'm thinking more of the movie that was made about Facebook called The Social Network, where Justin Timberlake was, having a conversation how, these older guys, they love to hear your ideas, and then they just take them and say, okay, boys, we'll take it from here, when they're probably just as intelligent as the older people. Here's one situation. I was subbing class. For some reason, this school had given their teachers too much power blocking computers. They were blocking computers just because they didn't give them assignment that day. And they would block the computers and then forget about it. I was supposed to teach a class one day, and their computers were blocked, and we weren't able to get them unblocked by the end of the day just because somebody, a teacher, had forgotten to unblock them. So why block them in the first place? You can tell what they're on. You got those programs. There was one teacher, however, young Generation Z, with a bunch of Generation Z students in his room. He decided to block all the computers of another class, the class that I was subbing, and they were taking a test. He even sent in a co-teacher to make a copy of my roster just so he knew which ones to block. Well, when they were complaining about how he had blocked their computers and they couldn't finish their test, some of them had to redo a couple of questions by the time it was over. I don't get upset, but I wanted him to think I was upset. He'd never met me. At least I don't think. Maybe he's young enough that I subbed him in high school down the road. But so I walked over to his room. I acted like I was mad. And I said, could you please unblock those students' computers? They're trying to take a test. And he said, oh, I know what they're on. Kind of a smart aleck answer. So I slammed the door. And I noticed he's looked at me differently since then. I would say he apparently was, him and another teacher were in a big prank war thing of anything. That's my prank to him. In fact, I almost decided to set him up for a prank. And why would I bring myself to his level? I don't want to do that. So I've gone through that. Would I have done that differently? No, probably not. In the future, if it happens, I'll probably be more diplomatic when I go over there. When I went over there were students standing around his computer. It gave the appearance that he let those students talk him in to blocking the other students' computers. Okay? And to me, that's just immature. It's not fun. It's just immature. And I've subbed his class a few times, and he's a great teacher. The kids love him. That took him 20 minutes of class time to do that. Maybe he had already given them an assignment and it really didn't matter. But I don't know, there was 5 or 6 students standing about around his computer watching him do it. So that's why those kind of things are why I won't go back and sub high school. So there it is. I'll stop right there. There's a few things that change. There's some interesting stories. I am not going to do this periodically. I'm not going to go out and say I'm going to do one episode a month or even one a quarter. I think I'll just do future episodes when I feel like enough has happened since the last one that I want to kind of bring you all up to date. And I missed it a little bit. I did. So thanks so much. There are still a lot of you that are finding this podcast for the first time. And because we still get more downloads every day. We're well over 100,000 downloads. So I like that. So that's it for this refresh. So we'll see you whenever I decide to do another one.